They say Christmas is about family, love, and gratitude. But what happens when the very person you've given everything to, the one you raised, supported, and sacrificed for, turns around and makes you feel unwanted? When my son casually said he wasn't expecting me for Christmas, he didn't realize he was about to unwrap a lesson money couldn't buy. And I made sure he'd remember it, starting with the mortgage payment he depends on. Sacrifice and ungratefulness often walk hand in hand in the most heartbreaking way, especially when it comes to family. From the moment a child is born, parents dedicate their lives to ensuring that their son or daughter never goes without. The long nights spent awake when the baby cries, the countless hours of hard work to provide food, clothes, and education, and the unspoken compromises a parent makes just to give their child a better life are sacrifices that can never truly be measured. These sacrifices are rarely glamorous. They don't come with medals or public recognition. They are quiet, invisible commitments made in the shadows of everyday life. A parent says no to their own dreams so their child can pursue theirs. A parent eats less so the child can have more. A parent wears old clothes so their child can fit in with new ones. These sacrifices pile up, one after another, and they form the very foundation of the child's comfortable existence. But there is a painful irony that emerges when the child, who has been given so much, grows up blind to those sacrifices. Ungratefulness doesn't always come in the form of shouting matches or outright disrespect. Sometimes it appears in subtle dismissals, in words thrown carelessly that cut deeper than intended. When a son, who has been raised with love, turns around and says he isn't expecting his parent for Christmas, the weight of those words is unbearable. It's not just about a holiday invitation. It's about what the statement really means, that the presence of the parent, after a lifetime of giving, is not valued. It is about being told, without much thought, that the sacrifices made over the years are now invisible, irrelevant, or simply not enough to warrant a place at the table during the one time of year meant for family togetherness. A parent might remember the sacrifices that led up to this moment. The times when bills piled up but the mortgage was always paid, just so the family could have a home to gather in. The times when vacations were skipped so the child could have new school supplies. The times when the parent went to bed exhausted, after long days of work, only to wake up and keep pushing forward because they wanted to build a stable future for their child. These memories stand in stark contrast to the ungrateful tone in the child's voice, and the injustice of it all begins to burn. Sacrifice without gratitude is like planting seeds in barren soil. It gives and gives, but nothing grows back. Ungratefulness is painful because it undermines the very essence of sacrifice. Sacrifice is built on love, but love expects at least recognition in return. A son doesn't need to repay every dollar spent or every hour worked, but he should never dismiss or forget the foundation upon which his comfort stands. To say a parent isn't expected for Christmas is to erase, in a single sentence, the years of sacrifice that made Christmas possible at all. That moment of rejection transforms every small sacrifice into a bitter memory. Suddenly, the meals cooked with care, the bills paid in silence, and the constant presence through childhood struggles feel like they were taken for granted, as if they had no meaning. What makes the pain sharper is the nature of the holiday itself. Christmas isn't just another day. It is a symbol of love, family, and unity. When a parent is told they aren't expected during Christmas, it is as if they are being erased from the very core of family life. The sacrifices they made are not just unacknowledged, but actively disregarded. It's one thing to be overlooked on an ordinary day, but quite another to be excluded from the moment meant to celebrate togetherness. This transforms ungratefulness from a passing oversight into a deliberate wound. The parent begins to wonder if their role in the family is no longer valued, if their sacrifices are now seen as obligations rather than gifts of love. Sacrifice, in its purest form, is not about expecting something in return. Parents rarely keep score, but ungratefulness creates a rupture, a sense that the sacrifices have been wasted. When the son says he isn't expecting his parent for Christmas, he doesn't realize that he is not only dismissing an invitation, but also dismissing the invisible decades of devotion that paved the way for his current stability. Ungratefulness takes the unspoken bond of family and reduces it to a transaction where only the benefits are remembered, never the costs. This one careless statement turns the parent's lifelong investment into something that feels unappreciated and unseen. What stings the most is that sacrifice always comes with a cost. For every hour a parent spends working, there is an hour of rest lost. For every dollar spent on the child, there is something the parent went without. These costs accumulate, and while a parent may endure them silently, they carry them in their heart. When those sacrifices are met with ungratefulness, it is as if the parent has been asked to carry a heavy load only to be told, at the end of the road, that no one noticed their effort. That kind of dismissal is not just disappointing. It is soul-crushing. It leaves the parent questioning whether the sacrifices were worth it, whether the love they poured out so freely was truly seen, or whether it has been taken as something ordinary and expected rather than extraordinary and rare. Words that cut deeper than silence often slip out in moments when people least expect their impact to linger. Silence itself can be painful. Yes, it carries with it the weight of absence, the sting of being ignored. But words, once spoken, have a permanence that silence does not. They are etched into memory, replayed in the mind again and again, each replay cutting deeper than the first. When a son looks at his parent and says that he isn't expecting them for Christmas, it is not a neutral statement. It is not simply an arrangement of words. It is a blade carefully but casually placed, slicing through years of love, memories, and devotion. The phrasing carries indifference, and in that indifference lies the wound. A parent spends a lifetime trying to give their child everything, not only in material terms, but in emotional presence. They listen when the child needs to talk, they comfort when the child is in pain, and they guide when the child is lost. All of those moments are built on words exchanged with warmth and care. The parent's voice has been a shield, a comfort, and a foundation. To then be struck with words that say, in effect, "You are not needed," is to turn that history on its head. It transforms the parent's role from essential to optional, from central to irrelevant. And the cruelty lies not in anger or confrontation, but in casual dismissal, in a tone that suggests this absence has already been assumed. Words linger differently than silence because silence can be explained away. Perhaps the person was busy. Perhaps they didn't know what to say. Silence, for all its sting, leaves room for interpretation. But words erase that room. They close the door on doubt. When the son says he isn't expecting his parent, the clarity of that rejection leaves no space for excuses. It is a deliberate communication, whether intended or not, that the parent is not part of the picture. That is why words cut deeper than silence. They are precise. They strike with intent, even when spoken carelessly. Parents often carry a vulnerability that children rarely see. They may appear strong, capable, and endlessly giving, but beneath that exterior lies a heart that craves acknowledgement, respect, and belonging. To hear words that deny them a place is to strike directly at that vulnerability. It is not about the holiday alone. It is about identity. For years, the parent's identity has been intertwined with caregiving, sacrifice, and unconditional love. With one sentence, that identity feels shattered. It sends a message that the role of the parent is no longer needed or appreciated, and that truth, spoken aloud, is more devastating than silence could ever be. What makes words even more piercing is their ability to echo. Long after the moment passes, they replay in the parent's mind. At night, when quiet sets in, those words rise again, sharper than before. The memory of the son's tone, the dismissive phrasing, the coolness of it all, those details do not fade. They embed themselves into memory, growing heavier with each recollection. Silence might fade into the background, but words carve grooves into the heart. They become landmarks in memory, moments that cannot be undone or forgotten. There is also the weight of expectation. A parent naturally hopes for words of love, of inclusion, of gratitude. They expect to hear things like, "I can't wait to see you," or "Christmas won't be the same without you." When instead they hear the opposite, the disappointment is magnified. The expectation of warmth collides with the reality of rejection, and the resulting impact is twice as painful. It's not only what was said, but also what was not said, the affection that was missing, the enthusiasm that was absent. Words can pierce not only through what they express, but also through what they fail to offer. The cruelty of words lies in their permanence. Once spoken, they cannot be taken back. Apologies may follow, explanations may be given, but the original cut remains. The son may one day try to soften his statement, but the parent will always remember the moment it was spoken. It becomes part of the story of their relationship, a scar that does not fade. And while silence can sometimes be healed with time and conversation, words leave behind a mark that resists healing. The sharpness of being told you are not expected is compounded by the intimacy of who says it. Strangers' words may wound, but they do not leave the same scar as words spoken by one's own child. A parent does not expect perfection from their son, but they expect loyalty, acknowledgement, and love. To be denied those through spoken words is to feel a betrayal of the deepest bond. It is the kind of betrayal that only family can inflict, because only family holds that much power over the heart. Words that cut deeper than silence are not forgotten because they redefine the relationship. They take what once felt secure and turn it uncertain. They change the way the parent sees their place in their child's life, and once spoken, that change cannot be undone. Even if love remains, even if forgiveness comes, those words continue to echo, reminding the parent of the moment they were made to feel unnecessary in the life they had worked so hard to build. The quiet power of financial control is something many people underestimate until it is exercised in ways they never anticipated. Money is often described as a tool, but in reality, it holds a certain authority over relationships, choices, and freedoms. For parents who have worked tirelessly to provide for their children, finances are not only about survival, but about creating stability, offering opportunities, and ensuring comfort. Every mortgage payment made, every bill covered, and every debt taken on is not just a number on a piece of paper, but a form of security that defines the quality of life for the family. The person who shoulders that financial responsibility quietly wields a power that may go unrecognized until the day it is withdrawn. When a child grows up within the shelter of financial stability, they often take it for granted. The lights that turn on with the flick of a switch, the warmth of a heated home in winter, the safety of knowing the mortgage is always paid. These are things that become so normal they are invisible. Yet behind that invisibility lies the effort of someone who has made those payments month after month, sometimes sacrificing their own wants and needs to make sure the family never felt instability. That quiet labor builds a foundation, and it becomes easy for those who benefit from it to forget that the foundation could crumble if the person funding it chose to stop. Financial control is quiet because it doesn't always need to be announced. A parent rarely reminds their child of the countless bills they've handled or the sacrifices they've made to keep money flowing. They don't sit at the dinner table listing debts paid or reminding the household of what could have gone wrong. Instead, they let the stability speak for itself. This silence can lead to a dangerous kind of blindness where the child believes that comfort and security are automatic, rather than the result of continuous effort. In that blindness, gratitude begins to fade, and entitlement creeps in. The moment ungratefulness emerges, the quiet power of financial control reveals its sharp edge. A son might dismiss his parents' presence, believing that love and obligation are separate from the financial sacrifices made. But when a parent cancels a mortgage payment, the reality of that quiet control comes crashing down. It is a reminder that comfort is not permanent, and that the person who has provided stability also holds the ability to withdraw it. That withdrawal does not even require anger or confrontation. It is a silent decision, executed through numbers, paperwork, and withheld payment, yet its impact is thunderous. The reason financial control is so powerful lies in its ability to alter daily life. Words may hurt, and silence may sting, but money determines whether a roof stays over one's head, whether bills are paid on time, and whether stress fills the home. For someone who has been dismissive, the sudden reminder that their comfort rests in another's hands is more shocking than any argument could ever be. The mortgage is not just a monthly expense. It is the anchor that keeps the home from drifting into chaos. To cancel it is not only to withdraw support, but to highlight dependence. That dependence, once revealed, shifts the balance of power in the relationship in ways that cannot be ignored. Financial control also carries a symbolic weight. It is not merely about money, but about recognition. When a parent chooses to cancel a payment, it is a statement that their sacrifices cannot be dismissed without consequence. It is a demonstration that stability is not automatic but earned through decades of effort. The child who took that effort for granted is forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that the comfort they enjoyed was not their own achievement, but a gift sustained by another's hard work. The lesson in this realization is not subtle. It lands heavily, demanding acknowledgement where before there was none. The quietness of financial power makes it more striking when it is finally asserted. A loud threat can be dismissed as anger, but a silent financial decision is undeniable. It cannot be argued away or forgotten because its effects ripple into every aspect of life. Suddenly, the ungrateful son sees bills piling up, notices the weight of responsibility pressing in, and feels the stress of uncertainty. The very things that once seemed so secure now feel fragile. That fragility is the clearest reminder of who has carried the burden all along. What deepens the power of financial control is that it is exercised without raising a voice, without confrontation, without visible conflict. It is action without words, and action always speaks louder. The mortgage that is not paid sends a louder message than any lecture could. It forces a reckoning, a pause to consider what has been taken for granted. The son cannot escape the consequences because they are tangible, undeniable, and tied to his daily existence. That is the ultimate strength of financial control. It does not need to shout to be heard, because its silence is louder than any words. Revenge served with a smile is one of the most disarming forms of payback because it cloaks power in calmness and turns the tables without a single raised voice. It is not about rage or visible fury. It is about quiet calculation and a measured response that leaves the other person stunned. When someone wrongs you, they often expect an outburst, a confrontation, or at least a visible sign of pain. What they do not expect is composure, patience, and a well-planned response delivered without anger. That is what makes revenge served with a smile so potent. It unsettles the offender more deeply than any emotional outpouring ever could. When a son carelessly tells his parent that they are not expected for Christmas, the natural response might be to cry, to argue, or to express heartbreak. That is what he might brace himself for. But instead, when the parent chooses not to show the sting but to quietly decide on a response, the dynamic shifts completely. The son assumes the comment will pass, that his words will fade without consequence. What he does not realize is that beneath the parent's calm smile, a plan is already forming, one that will remind him of the value of respect and appreciation in a way he will never forget. The brilliance of revenge, served with a smile, is its subtlety. It is not loud or messy. It does not expose bitterness or create a scene. Instead, it unfolds naturally, almost gently, leaving the recipient blindsided when the full weight of the action becomes clear. For the son, who depends on the mortgage being paid, the realization comes slowly but powerfully when he discovers that the payment has been canceled. At first, he may feel confusion, wondering if there has been a mistake. Then, as the truth sinks in, the shock grows sharper. This was not an oversight, but a deliberate choice. And the choice came not with yelling or accusations, but with silence and an unshakable calm that cuts far deeper. Revenge wrapped in calmness carries a psychological edge. Anger can be dismissed as impulsive, as something said or done in the heat of the moment. But a calculated response, delivered without visible emotion, is impossible to ignore. It communicates that the act of revenge was not about losing control, but about taking control. It shows that the person who appeared to be dismissed, diminished, or overlooked actually holds more power than the offender imagined. That realization unsettles the balance of the relationship, making the offender question not only the act itself, but the hidden strength they underestimated. The smile, whether literal or metaphorical, becomes part of the sting. It represents composure, even satisfaction, while the other person grapples with the consequences. It is not the smile of cruelty, but the smile of quiet justice, the kind of expression that says, "You brought this on yourself, and now you will learn." It removes the satisfaction the offender might have had in provoking a reaction. Instead of seeing their words cause visible pain, they are left watching as their own life is disrupted by an action they never saw coming. That loss of control is part of the revenge itself. Another strength of revenge, served with a smile, is that it teaches a lesson without requiring explanation. Words can be debated, excuses can be made, but tangible consequences cannot be argued away. When the mortgage payment disappears, the son cannot deflect responsibility or twist the narrative. He cannot say the parent overreacted or misunderstood. The reality is clear. He dismissed his parent, and the foundation he relied on was quietly withdrawn in return. That undeniable clarity is the hallmark of an effective lesson, and it lingers far longer than any scolding or confrontation could. Revenge in this form is not about cruelty, but about balance. It is about making someone understand the weight of their actions by experiencing the fallout themselves. The calmness of the delivery ensures that the act does not come from bitterness, but from intention. It sends the message that love and sacrifice are not infinite resources to be taken lightly. It reminds the offender that respect must be mutual and that dismissiveness has a cost. In this way, the revenge is not only satisfying for the one who delivers it, but instructive for the one who receives it. What makes this form of revenge so enduring in memory is the contrast it creates. The son expected the parent to be hurt and vocal, but instead, he is met with silence and a smile while his world begins to unravel. That dissonance between expectation and reality deepens the impact. It is not just the consequence itself, but the manner in which it is delivered that makes it unforgettable. The calm exterior paired with decisive action ensures that the lesson is etched into his memory, tied forever to the moment he underestimated the very person who gave him everything. Lessons hidden in tough love often emerge in ways that do not look like lessons at all when they are first delivered. They disguise themselves as consequences, as discomfort, even as what feels like punishment. Yet beneath that exterior lies a truth that only time can reveal. That love sometimes requires firmness, boundaries, and actions that do not appear gentle on the surface. A parent who chooses tough love is not abandoning their child, but trying to guide them toward an understanding that words alone cannot teach. It is an approach that recognizes that comfort can breed complacency, and that sometimes only discomfort can break through ungratefulness or entitlement. When a son dismisses his parent by saying he is not expecting them for Christmas, he does not realize that the statement cuts to the core of years of sacrifice and devotion. To let those words pass without consequence would mean allowing disrespect to take root, leaving the child blind to the weight of what has been given. Tough love, in this moment, becomes a way of showing that actions have meaning, that words carry responsibility, and that even family bonds cannot survive if they are continuously taken for granted. Canceling the mortgage payment may feel harsh, but it becomes a hidden lesson. Security is not automatic, and the person who provides it deserves respect and acknowledgement. The beauty of tough love lies in its long-term impact. Gentle reminders and repeated lectures often fade from memory, especially when someone feels entitled to what they receive. Words like "be grateful" or "respect your parents" may be heard but not absorbed, because the comfort of stability shields the listener from consequences. Tough love removes that shield. It forces the recipient to live through the outcome of their actions, to see with their own eyes what it feels like when the safety net is withdrawn. That experience teaches in a way that speeches cannot. The son may not remember a warning given in anger, but he will never forget the moment he faced the stress of an unpaid mortgage because of his own dismissive behavior. At its core, tough love is an act of faith. It trusts that the person on the receiving end will eventually see the lesson hidden within the discomfort. It is a gamble that the child will not only recognize the cause of their struggle, but also trace it back to the choices they made. This requires patience from the parent, because the understanding is not always immediate. At first, the son may feel only anger, confusion, or even betrayal. He may not recognize the connection between his words and the consequences. But as time passes and the weight of responsibility sinks in, the clarity emerges. The lesson takes root not in the moment of conflict, but in the reflection that follows. Tough love also challenges the giver. For a parent, withholding comfort goes against instinct. It is natural to want to protect, to shield, and to give without pause. Choosing tough love means resisting that instinct, because the greater gift lies in teaching resilience and accountability. It is not easy to watch a child struggle, even briefly, but the struggle is necessary to foster growth. Without it, the child may continue down a path of entitlement, blind to the sacrifices made on their behalf. In this way, The parent's choice is not about cruelty, but about courage. The courage to do what is harder in the short term for the sake of long-term growth. The lesson hidden within tough love also extends beyond money or material security. It speaks to values, to respect, and to understanding the invisible labor that underpins stability. The son learns that dismissing his parent is not a harmless oversight, but a devaluation of years of dedication. He learns that love does not mean endless tolerance of disrespect, and that even the strongest bonds require recognition and gratitude. These are lessons that will echo through every aspect of his life, shaping how he approaches relationships, responsibilities, and the people who support him in the future. There is also a moral weight to tough love, because it forces the recipient to confront the reality of their own actions. Instead of blaming circumstances or others, they are faced with a direct connection between their choices and their consequences. The unpaid mortgage is not the result of misfortune, but of their own dismissive words. That clarity can be painful, but it is also liberating, because it empowers them to change. Once they recognize that their actions have power, both to harm and to heal, they can begin to take responsibility for the way they treat others, especially those who have given them the most. In the end, the strength of lessons hidden in tough love is that they endure. Soft words may be forgotten, but lived experiences remain etched in memory. The discomfort becomes a turning point, a reminder of the boundaries that must not be crossed and the respect that must be upheld. Tough love may look cold in the moment, but its true warmth is revealed in the growth it inspires, and in the gratitude it eventually draws out from the very person who once failed to see what was right in front of them. The cost of taking family for granted is not always paid immediately, but when it arrives, it demands a heavy toll. Family is often seen as a constant, a bond so strong that it will endure no matter how much it is tested. That perception can make people careless, assuming that no matter what they say or do, the family member will always remain, always give, and always forgive. But when taken too far, that assumption collapses, and the person who was once dependable withdraws their support. The cost is not only material but emotional, reshaping relationships in ways that may never be fully repaired. A son who tells his parent that they are not expected for Christmas may think the words are harmless, even casual. He assumes the bond is unshakable, that his parent will overlook the sting, and that life will continue as usual. What he does not realize is that each dismissal chips away at the trust and love that family is built upon. Taken for granted, even the strongest relationship begins to weaken, because love without recognition begins to feel like exploitation. The cost emerges in the parent's heart first, where disappointment takes root and grows into a quiet resolve. That resolve manifests in action, such as the decision to cancel a mortgage payment. For the son, the financial consequences are immediate and overwhelming. What was once stable and secure is suddenly fragile, and the realization dawns that the comfort he enjoyed depended on someone he treated as optional. The cost of taking family for granted becomes clear when the safety net disappears. It is not only the practical stress of bills piling up, but the deeper recognition that security was never self-sustained. It was provided through sacrifice and commitment. The emotional cost, however, runs even deeper. To be told by a parent that their support is no longer guaranteed strikes at the core of identity. For years, the son may have believed that his parents' presence and contributions were simply part of life, something he could count on without question. When that certainty is removed, he is forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that family bonds require effort from both sides. Respect and appreciation are not optional gestures, but essential elements that keep those bonds alive. The absence of that recognition is what transforms love into disappointment and giving into withdrawal. Taking family for granted also carries the cost of isolation. Family gatherings, once warm and welcoming, lose their joy when disrespect hangs in the air. Words once said in carelessness echo through future interactions, making every conversation feel strained. The holiday table that should be filled with laughter feels emptier when bonds have been fractured. That emptiness is not only physical but emotional, a reminder that once a parent has been dismissed, the relationship does not return easily to what it once was. The cost here is the loss of belonging, the fading of unconditional acceptance that once seemed eternal. There is also the unseen cost of missed wisdom and guidance. Parents often carry life lessons, advice, and perspectives shaped by years of experience. When a child takes them for granted, they also close themselves off to that wisdom. Instead of drawing strength and insight from their parent, they reduce them to a background figure, irrelevant to their daily life. The result is a shallower understanding of the world, a loss of guidance that could have prevented mistakes or offered comfort. In time, the absence of that wisdom becomes another silent cost, one that may only be recognized in moments of personal struggle. Perhaps the heaviest cost is regret. When the reality of what has been lost finally sinks in, regret arrives with a weight that cannot be lifted easily. The son may one day look back and realize how much his parent gave, how much they sacrificed, and how little he acknowledged it in return. That realization does not erase the past, but adds to its burden, because opportunities to show gratitude cannot be recovered once they are gone. Regret becomes a shadow that lingers, a reminder of the moments when love was overlooked and when family was undervalued. The cost of taking family for granted is therefore layered. It begins with emotional disappointment, grows into practical consequences, and eventually crystallizes into lasting regret. Each stage reminds the person who took their loved one for granted that family is not an endless resource, but a fragile, precious bond that must be nurtured. What makes the cost so severe is that it touches every part of life: financial stability, emotional security, personal growth, and the sense of belonging that only family can provide. Once that cost is paid, it leaves behind lessons that endure far longer than comfort ever did. 1.